Your boss questions your decision in front of the team, and you immediately launch into a detailed explanation of your reasoning. Your friend makes a snide comment about your lifestyle, and you find yourself justifying your choices for the next 10 minutes. Someone cuts you in line, and you're explaining why you were there first. A family member criticizes your career path, and you're listing all your accomplishments to prove them wrong. It's not because you're wrong. It's not because your points aren't valid. It's because you're defending yourself. I watched this play out in a restaurant last week. A waiter brought the wrong order to a table, and the customer immediately started explaining why he needed the correct dish, how he'd been specific about his allergies, how this wasn't his fault. The waiter just stood there, nodding, while the man's voice got higher and more desperate. At the next table, a woman received the same wrong order. She looked at it, looked at the waiter, and said nothing. Just waited. The waiter scrambled to fix it immediately, apologizing profusely, offering free dessert. Same mistake, two different responses. One person defended their right to correct service and got treated like a complainer. The other said nothing and got treated like someone who shouldn't be crossed. It doesn't mean you should become aggressive. It means you must become unshakable. Because in a room full of people explaining themselves, the one who says nothing is the one everyone believes has nothing to explain. The 5 situations where defending destroys you, situation 5, will blow your mind. Situation 1, when someone questions your competence. Picture this. You're in a meeting and someone says, "Are you sure that's the right approach? I'm not convinced you've thought this through." Your stomach drops. Your face gets hot. And before you can stop yourself, you're rattling off your credentials, your experience, every piece of research that led to your decision. Well, actually, I have 5 years of experience in this area, and I've seen this work in my previous company. I spent 3 weeks analyzing the data. And if you look at the market trend from the last quarter, you'll see that this approach has a 73% success rate compared to the alternative, which only shows. By the time you're done, everyone's looking at you like you just had a breakdown. Because that's exactly what happened. You had an emotional breakdown disguised as a logical explanation. You went from confident professional to desperate student begging for approval in 30 seconds. Here's what just happened in that room. You didn't defend your competence. You revealed your insecurity. Every person watching now knows exactly how to rattle you. They know that questioning your expertise will send you into explanation mode. They found your emotional trigger, and they'll use it whenever they want to destabilize you. Here's what Machiavelli understood that you don't. Competent people don't need to prove their competence. The moment you start listing your qualifications, you're admitting that their doubt has merit. You're saying, "You're right to question me. Let me convince you otherwise." But think about the most respected person in your workplace. When someone questions their judgment, what do? They don't launch into a defense. They might pause. They might say, "Interesting perspective." They might ask, "What would you suggest instead?" But they don't scramble to prove themselves. Why? Because they understand something fundamental about power dynamics. The person who feels compelled to prove their competence is automatically seen as less competent than the person who doesn't feel that compulsion. Watch what happens when someone questions the competence of a truly powerful person. They don't explain. They don't justify. They might raise an eyebrow. They might say, "We'll see," and then they let their results do the talking. Their confidence is so unshakable that your doubt feels irrelevant to them. Why does defending your competence destroy you? Because it reveals that you're more concerned with their opinion than your own confidence. It shows that you need external validation to feel secure in your abilities. And once people see that need, they'll use it against you forever. Every time you defend your competence, you're training people to question it. You're showing them that doubt is a weapon that works on you. You're teaching them that if they want to throw you off balance, all they have to do is express skepticism about your abilities. But here's the deeper problem. When you defend your competence with words, you're implying that competence is something that can be argued. You're suggesting that if someone doesn't believe in your abilities, those abilities somehow become less real. You're making your expertise dependent on their approval. What should you do instead? Nothing. Let the question hang in the air. Let them wonder if you heard them. Let them feel awkward for challenging someone who clearly doesn't feel the need to defend themselves. Your silence says, "Your doubt is irrelevant to my certainty." When someone questions your approach and you don't defend it, something powerful happens. The room shifts. People start wondering why you're so calm. They start questioning whether the challenger knows something they don't. Your unshakable confidence becomes more convincing than any argument you could have made. Machiavelli knew that the most devastating response to doubt isn't explanation. It's indifference. When you treat someone's skepticism like background noise, you force them to either escalate to obvious aggression or back down. Either way, you win. Before we move further, do like and subscribe to my channel. Situation 2. When someone spreads rumors about you. Someone's been talking about you behind your back. Maybe they told people you're difficult to work with. Maybe they said you got your promotion through politics instead of merit. Maybe they spread some story about your personal life that makes you look bad. And your first instinct is to set the record straight, to tell your side, to make sure everyone knows the truth. So you start your damage control campaign. You pull people aside and explain what really happened. You provide context they're missing. You defend your character and your actions. You make sure to tell your version before they hear the other one. You think you're being smart, getting ahead of the story. But here's what's actually happening. You're turning a whisper into a shout. You're taking something that maybe 5 people heard and making sure 50 people know about it. You're not killing the rumor. You're giving it CPR. I watched this happen to a colleague once. Someone started a rumor that she was looking for another job. Instead of ignoring it, she spent 2 weeks telling everyone how committed she was to the company, how she loved her role, how she'd never leave. By the end of those 2 weeks, everyone was talking about whether she was job hunting. The rumor became the most interesting thing about her. And ironically, all that defensive energy made her look guilty of exactly what she was denying. Machiavelli would have watched you do this and shaken his head, because he knew something you don't. Rumors die from lack of attention, not from opposition. When you defend against gossip, you're not killing it. You're feeding it. Think about how rumors actually work. Someone says something about you. If you ignore it, what happens? Maybe a few people hear it. Maybe they wonder if it's true for about 5 minutes. Then they move on to the next piece of gossip. There are a million other things to think about. Your silence lets the rumor fade into irrelevance. But when you start defending yourself, suddenly everyone's paying attention. Now it's not just a rumor, it's a controversy. It's drama. It's entertainment. People who never would have heard the original gossip are now hearing your defense and wondering what you're defending against. Your explanation doesn't make you look innocent. It makes you look guilty of caring too much about what people think. It shows that these people have power over your emotional state. And that's exactly the weakness they were looking for when they started the rumor in the first place. Here's the psychological trap you're falling into. You think that silence equals agreement. You think that if you don't defend yourself, people will assume the rumor is true. But that's not how human psychology works. When you defend yourself against gossip, you're actually validating the gossip as something worth defending against. But when you completely ignore a rumor, something interesting happens. People start to question why you're not bothered by it. They think, if this were true and damaging, wouldn't they be upset? Wouldn't they want to clear their name? Your indifference makes the rumor seem less credible, not more. Machiavelli understood that your reputation isn't built on what you say about yourself. It's built on what you consistently do over time. One rumor can't destroy a reputation that's been built through consistent action. But your panicked defense of that reputation can make you look weak enough that people start to believe you might be capable of whatever they're saying. What should you do instead? Let them talk. Let the rumor exist in the space it was given and watch it die from irrelevance. Don't acknowledge it. Don't reference it. Don't even hint that you've heard it. Continue being exactly who you are and let your actions speak louder than their words. Your silence says, "This is so beneath me that I won't even acknowledge it exists." And that's infinitely more powerful than any defense you can mount. Because when you don't defend against gossip, you're showing everyone that you're untouchable by it. You're demonstrating that your sense of self is so solid that other people's opinions can't shake it. The people spreading rumors want a reaction. They want to see you scramble. They want to watch you get defensive and emotional. When you give them nothing, when you remain completely unaffected, you rob them of the satisfaction they were seeking. And usually, they move on to easier targets. Situation 3. When someone disrespects you publicly. You're at dinner with friends, and someone makes a joke at your expense. "Oh, here comes Sarah, always showing up late." Some things never change, right? Everyone laughs. Your face burns with embarrassment and anger. And you feel like you have to say something, do something, prove that you won't be treated this way. So you fire back. "Actually, I'm only 5 minutes late, and it's because I was stuck in traffic from that accident on the highway. And for the record, I'm usually on time. Remember last week when I was the first one here?" You defend your punctuality. You explain the circumstances. You try to turn the tables and make them look bad for calling you out. And somehow, you end up looking like the one who can't take a joke, the one who's too sensitive, the one who ruined the mood. Everyone's looking at you like you just overreacted to something harmless. The person who disrespected you gets to play it off like they were just being playful, and you're the one who made it weird. This is the cruelest trap of all, because your instinct to defend your dignity is exactly what destroys it. Here's what just happened in that moment. You didn't stand up for yourself. You revealed that their comment hit its target. You showed everyone at that table that this person has the power to make you lose your composure. You proved that their opinion of you matters enough to make you emotional. I've seen this play out in boardrooms, at family dinners, and friend groups. Someone makes a cutting remark, and the target immediately goes into defense mode. They explain, they justify, they try to prove the comment was unfair. And every single time, they end up looking weaker than if they'd said nothing at all. Machiavelli understood that dignity isn't something you defend. It's something you embody. When someone disrespects you and you react emotionally, you're confirming that they successfully got under your skin. You're showing everyone that this person has the power to affect your emotional state. But think about someone you know who has real presence, real dignity. When someone tries to embarrass them publicly, what happens? They don't scramble to defend themselves. They might smile slightly. They might look amused. They might even agree with the joke in a way that makes the joke teller look petty. "You're absolutely right. I am running late tonight. Good thing you all started without me." And then they sit down like nothing happened. No explanation, no defensiveness, no emotional reaction, just calm acknowledgement and moving on. When someone disrespects you and you don't react at all, when you just look at them calmly, maybe smile slightly, and continue the conversation as if nothing happened, that's when everyone realizes that this person just tried to hurt someone who's completely untouchable. Your reaction gives their disrespect meaning. Your silence makes their disrespect look pathetic. Here's what's really happening when someone disrespects you publicly. They're not just trying to hurt you. They're trying to establish dominance in front of an audience. They want to show everyone that they can make you react, that they have power over your emotional state. It's a performance, and you're supposed to play the role of the victim. But when you don't play that role, when you refuse to give them the reaction they're fishing for, their performance falls flat. They end up looking like someone who tried to pick a fight with someone who's above fighting. They look small, and you look untouchable. The most devastating response to public disrespect isn't a clever comeback. It's complete indifference. When you treat their attempt to embarrass you like it didn't even register, you're showing everyone in that room that you operate on a different level than they do. What should you do instead? Treat their disrespect like background noise. Don't acknowledge it. Don't respond to it. Let it hang in the air while you continue being exactly who you are. Maybe take a sip of your drink. Maybe check your phone. Maybe continue the conversation you were having before they interrupted. Your composure says, "You'll have to try much harder than that to reach me." And usually, they don't try again. Because there's nothing more deflating than trying to hurt someone who acts like you don't have the power to hurt them. Machiavelli knew that the people who command respect aren't the ones who demand it. They're the ones who are so secure in themselves that other people's attempts to diminish them seem ridiculous. They don't fight for their dignity because their dignity isn't up for debate. Situation 4. When someone questions your character, this one cuts the deepest. Someone looks you in the eye and says, "You know, you're really selfish. You only think about yourself." Or maybe it's, "I don't trust you anymore. You're not the person I thought you were." Or the classic, "You're being manipulative and everyone can see it." Your heart stops. This isn't about your work or your choices. This is about who you are as a person. And every fiber of your being wants to prove them wrong, to show them all the ways you're actually a good person. So you start building your case. How can you say I'm selfish? Remember when I helped you move last month? And I always listen when you need to talk. Just last week You list examples like you're presenting evidence to a jury. You tell them about all the times you've been generous, all the sacrifices you've made, all the ways you've put others first. You explain your motivations. "I wasn't being manipulative, I was just trying to help. My intentions were good. You're misunderstanding what I was doing." You try to prove your goodness with a resume of your kindness. Like character is something you can demonstrate with a PowerPoint presentation. But here's what you don't realize. The moment you start proving you're a good person, you've already lost. Because good people don't need to prove they're good. Their actions speak for themselves over time. I watched this happen to a friend who was accused of being fake by someone in our group. Instead of letting it go, she spent the next hour listing all the ways she was authentic, all the times she'd been real with people, all the reasons why she wasn't fake. By the end of it, everyone was questioning whether someone who had to work that hard to prove their authenticity might actually be fake after all. Machiavelli knew that character attacks are never really about your character. They're about power. The person attacking you isn't genuinely concerned about your moral fiber. They're trying to put you in a position where you feel compelled to seek their approval. Think about what's really happening when someone questions your character. They're not conducting an honest assessment of who you are. They're trying to make you dance for their validation. They want to watch you scramble to prove your worth to them. They want to see you beg for their good opinion. When you defend your character, you're essentially saying, "Your opinion of my morality matters to me." You're giving them the power to judge you. You're making their assessment relevant to your self-worth. You're turning them into the authority on who you are as a person. But here's the thing about character. It's not something you can argue someone into believing. It's not something you can prove with examples. Character is demonstrated through consistent action over time, not through desperate explanations in the moment someone questions it. When someone questions your character and you don't defend it, when you just look at them like they said something completely irrelevant, that's when they realize their opinion carries no weight with you. And that's terrifying to someone who is trying to control you. The strongest response to a character attack isn't a defense. It's indifference. When someone calls you selfish and you just shrug, you're saying, "Your assessment of my character is irrelevant to my knowledge of who I am." When someone questions your integrity and you don't even blink, you're showing them that you don't need their validation to feel good about yourself. But here's what really happens when you defend your character. You're not just trying to change their mind about you. You're revealing that their mind about you matters. You're showing them that you need their approval to feel secure in who you are. And once they see that need, they'll use it against you forever. What should you do instead? Let your actions speak over time. Don't defend your character with words. Live it with consistency. When someone questions who you are, let them question. Your silence says, "I know who I am," and your assessment is irrelevant to that knowledge. Machiavelli understood that the people who are most secure in their character are the ones who feel no need to defend it. They know that anyone who truly knows them won't question their character, and anyone who questions their character doesn't truly know them. Either way, the opinion is irrelevant. The most powerful thing you can do when someone attacks your character is to continue being exactly who you are. Don't change. Don't explain. Don't prove. Just be. Because your consistency over time will either prove them wrong or prove them irrelevant. And both outcomes serve you. Situation 5. When someone tries to make you explain your boundaries. You say no to something. Maybe your boss asks you to work this weekend again, and you decline. Maybe a friend wants to borrow money, and you're not comfortable with it. Maybe your family expects you to attend another obligation you don't want to go to. You give a simple, "I can't do that," or "that doesn't work for me." And immediately, they start pushing. Why not? What's the big deal? Come on, just this once. You did it before. Why is this different? What else could you possibly have going on? You feel the pressure building. You feel like you owe them an explanation. So you start justifying your boundary. Well, I've been working a lot of overtime lately, and I really need a rest. Plus, I have some personal things I need to take care of, and I promised myself I'd start having better work-life balance. And somehow, your no becomes a negotiation. They start picking apart your reasons. But this project is really important. Your personal stuff can wait, can it? You can rest next weekend. Come on, the team is counting on you. Before you know it, you're defending your right to have boundaries. You're explaining why your reasons are valid. You're trying to make them understand why you can't do what they're asking. And somehow, you end up either giving in or looking like the unreasonable one. This is where most people lose their power completely. Because the moment you explain your boundary, you've turned it into a debate. You've suggested that if they can counter your reasons, you might change your mind. I watched this happen to someone at a restaurant. The waiter kept pushing wine pairings, and instead of just saying no thanks, the customer started explaining that they were driving, that they had an early morning, that they were trying to cut back on alcohol. The waiter kept pushing back on each reason. It's just one glass. You could take an Uber. One drink won't hurt your morning. What should have been a simple no turned into a 5-minute negotiation because the customer felt like they needed to justify their choice. Machiavelli would have seen this as the ultimate test of personal sovereignty, because boundaries aren't requests for understanding. They're statements of fact. When you say no, you're not opening a discussion. You're closing one. But when you start explaining why you said no, you're essentially saying, my boundary is only valid if you agree with my reasoning. You're giving them veto power over your own decisions. You're making your right to say no dependent on their approval of your reasons. Think about the most respected people you know. When they say no to something, do they launch into explanations? Do they justify their decisions? Do they try to make you understand why they can't do what you're asking? No. They say no, and that's it. Maybe they say, that doesn't work for me. Maybe they say, I'm not available. But they don't explain why. They don't justify their choice. They don't try to make you feel better about their decision. Why? Because they understand that boundaries aren't about the other person's comfort. They're about your own limits. And you don't need permission to have limits. The strongest people don't explain their boundaries because they don't need permission to have them. Their no isn't the beginning of a conversation. It's the end of one. But here's what happens when you explain your boundaries. You're training people to push back. You're showing them that your no isn't final. It's just the opening position in a negotiation. You're teaching them that if they can find flaws in your reasoning, they can change your mind. Every time you justify your boundary, you're making it weaker. You're suggesting that it's conditional, that it depends on circumstances they might be able to change. You're turning your personal limits into something that's up for debate. What should you do instead? Say no and stop talking. Let them push. Let them ask why. Let them try to guilt you or pressure you. Your silence says, this isn't a negotiation. This is information. When someone asks why you can't do something and you don't explain, something powerful happens. They realize that your decision isn't based on circumstances they can argue with. It's based on something deeper, something they can't access or change. Your boundary becomes absolute instead of conditional. Machiavelli knew that the moment you start justifying your decisions, you've given other people the power to approve or disapprove of them. But when you make decisions and don't explain them, you keep that power for yourself. The most devastating response to boundary pressure isn't a better explanation. It's no explanation at all. When you refuse to justify your limits, You're showing people that your boundaries aren't up for discussion. And that's when they realize they're dealing with someone whose decisions aren't influenced by their approval. Your silence says, I don't need you to understand my choice for it to be valid. And that's the most powerful position you can take in any relationship.